Excuse me. Hello everybody. The vlog will start in 1 minute. Had an interesting service call. About 30 more seconds, guys. About 10 more seconds. Hey guys, I just left a service call, and oddly enough, I did do a little video on this, and a lot of these vlogs where I'm talking about calls I've been on or jobs I've been on, I'm trying to videotape as much of those as possible, so when you see the video over on Talent 875 Pro, you'll have some background to it already, and you'll be able to sort of draw a few inferences and know what's going on a little bit more so than someone who doesn't see the vlogs. But I got a call from a Bryant unit I put in about a year ago. I think it was April of last year. And it was episode 4 in my little episode series called If You Can't Take the Heat. It was me and Palace. We were working on the job together. And we installed the system and tested it. So I know it was up and running good. And didn't have any issues, of course. And it's been a year now. And the guy was super pleased with it because we added enlarged a run out to his former garage, which he turned into a den. It had never been heated or cooled properly, and for the first time it was in like 15 years, I think it was. So everything was great, everything was happy. And he calls me and says that the unit outside is cutting on and off, on and off, on and off. And I asked him if it was cutting off in heat or cool. And he said it was heat because it's still kind of cool out here today. So I said, okay. And I said, is your fan on the inside running? And he said, no, I haven't heard the fan running. So we had it cutting on and off, and the fan, he can't tell if it's running. Which sort of sounds like the high pressure switch is cutting it on and off, because in heat, you have pressure build up on that indoor coil. Normally you have a higher head pressure in heat at the same temperature that, comparative in cooling. So if you have a fan shutdown or a dirty coil, some sort of airflow restriction, you're going to get a real high head pressure. So I went to the house. He was still home. He was leaving to go back to work. And we turned on the fan. I went right to the thermostat and turned on the fan, and nothing happened. So I said, well, that's a shame. Nothing happened there on the fan motor. And so I went up into the attic. He had to leave. And what it was, the Bryant unit, just a regular old 14 SEER air handler, had the TXV and the ECM motor. And the ECM motor is one of these Broad Ocean ECM motors. And Broad Ocean's a Chinese motor company that a lot of people use. I've seen them in Goodman a lot, ICP, Carrier. Oddly enough, the 2 reams that I've done haven't had any Broad Ocean motors in them, but that doesn't mean there's not one out there. They've been, I want to say they were Gentech, but I'm not sure. Broad Ocean motor, it was getting voltage, low voltage control, and it wasn't running, and it was hot to the touch, which means it was having an issue on the inside. I took it apart, took the module off of it and took a look at it. A lot of times these motors will have these little inrush inhibitors that you can. I have zero quality. Well, my quality dropped off all of a sudden there. But a lot of times these ECM motors will have these inrush inhibitors. in the module, and I looked in there and there was no burnt spot, there was nothing blown, there was nothing to say that there would be any issue at all. No burn spot, the harnesses were fine. I didn't ohm out the motor because it didn't matter, because I'd be sending it all back anyway. So the ECM motor was dead. It hadn't even been a year. A lot of times when ECM motors have problems, it'll be because there's an airflow problem, there's a wrong application, and that's not the case here. We checked the airflow. It's a 2.5 ton system. We confirmed the airflow was 1,000 CFM. I think it was right on the money, maybe a little bit like 975 to 1,000, something like that. But that's actually on the video. We charged the unit up. You can see it on the video too. So I was real surprised. So if it's not the airflow related, it's not application related, it leads me to believe it is motor related. The motors are supposed to be real good. These brushless DC motors are supposed to be great. And I think under the right applications, most of the good ones are. But now we're starting to deal with these Chinese ECM motors that are flooding the market, and Chinese PSC motors that are on condenser fans, and I don't know if they're on evaporator motors as well. I think they are. I can't remember what Goodman uses for their evaporators now, but I think it might be Broad Ocean. Even the Carrier commercial motors, I remember taking out a GE commercial condenser fan motor, and they'll give you a Broad Ocean motor for that now too. So they're all over the market, and the reason why is I'm sure because they're cheap. And obviously this one's failed. It hasn't even been a year yet. So I want to put it out there and see what you guys say. Have you guys been running into this as well? Seeing these Broad Ocean motors fail prematurely? Now I haven't seen it happen a whole lot, but a lot of my ECMs are, the Broad Ocean ones are in those ICP and Carrier air handlers. And that's the first one that has failed. Actually, no, there's been two. I'm sorry. There's been two that have failed. One has been a couple of years ago. And to me, that's not very good, because I don't remember any of my PSC blower motors failing from the factory for several years. Of course, it's harder to find one now. It's just basically Goodman equipment. And I think maybe that TEM4 from Train has a PSC motor. I did put in a few of the Ream-style thermal zones that had PSC motors, the air handlers. They were 13 SEER. And there's been no issues with those. They're simpler. I mean, the word is, brushes wear out over a long period of time, just like anything else. But these motors are lasting a long time compared to their ECM counterparts. And I think ECM motors take a big beating, because when you put them in the improper airflow situations, where you have excessive static, where they're trying to ramp up, especially these variable speed motors that are trying to get to a constant CFM, and you're putting this tremendous static on them, they're not able to do it, and they end up hunting around because they're ramping up beyond where they're supposed to. And that information is, thank you to Larry Cole for teaching us about that a while back. So what happens when we have an ECM motor market is turning into a cheaper Chinese motor? Possibly we're going to have a whole bunch of failures again in X13s. But like I said, this is the youngest one I've had fail was just a few months old. And I've had a lot of Goodman ECM X13 motors fail. Now, they weren't Broad Ocean, I don't think. I think they were something else. I don't remember what they were, but it wasn't Broad Ocean. So to make these things competitive, though, they're going to have to lower the price or lower the quality or both. It's a concern to me. And right now I have a PSC motor, half horsepower, with a 10 microfarad capacitor in that machine to hold those people over until I order the other motor. And the sad part is, the motor I put in there is probably a better motor than the motor they're going to get back from the factory. It just kind of sucks. A lot of these, I don't know, pardon my French, but a lot of these X13 motors they're sticking in things they're pussies. They can't push any air. They don't push any air. They're made to get to, they're tested under very low static. So, and I'm guessing that is because that is the only way they achieve their SEER rating, is to get this low static requirement. They test the motor, it gets enough air at like 0.2 or 0.3 static, but when you take it out of the box and put it into the real world, where you might have a duct system that, they're not going to replace it, that has like a 0.7 static, these motors can't stack up. The GAM 5, I looked at the blower chart for it, and it just appears pathetic, some of the air that it pushes. It's very sad. The reams that I've done, you know, this oversized one I did yesterday with the 4-ton air handler with a 3.5-ton condenser, yeah, it had plenty of air because it's a 4-ton air handler. But the 3-ton matched up with the 3-ton on maximum speed. I mean, the duct system was undersized slightly, but it wasn't that bad. It was still pushing 1,100 out of 1,200 CFM. It couldn't push anywhere near the full 1,200 because, you know, it's just kind of sad. You have to make things more efficient, have things be more efficient. They can't have these huge half horsepower and 3/4 horsepower PSC motors that are pulling, you know, 3, 4, 5 amps at 240 volts. They have to knock it down, lower the static, use X13 motors, but you know, it turns out, you know, them fuckers suck. And you know, I'm sure there's good ones and bad ones of each type of motor, but I have a real fear that the Chinese motors that are flooding the market are going to die prematurely, and they're not going to be like these, you know, these GE 2.3 variable speeds, which I think are very good motors. I like those motors. When used properly, they seem like excellent motors. But not all ECMs are created equal. They sound fancy, they sound great, you know, they have the electronically commutated motor. And it sounds fantastic, like it's a great advancement. But it's made cheap as shit. It isn't gonna matter how nice it is. But alas, the poor PSC motor is probably gonna be better than the ECM motor. I had to order that thing and go back over there and change it out. I did make video of it. Nothing extravagant because, you know, it's a fairly simple process. We're just taking the motor out. I put a capacitor on it. I put a small Pino style relay. I had one of those single pole double throw relays, so I just used it. Got to pull open and close with the fan call. And there's not two separate calls on this unit. There's not a fan call and like a compressor or running call. It's just they have a compressor call, and they do have a emergency heat tap, but it's fine. In the interim, it's not going to matter very much. And they're not going to be using very much emergency heat the next week or two, because I think in the next week we're going to start breaking into the 80s, and probably where we're going to stay, because spring will be coming to an end and summer is going to be coming here shortly. But I just want to share that about my service call, guys. X13 motors, they're like, you take a GE 2.3 motor and a PSC motor, and it's like a bastard child of those two motors. And it's not as good as either. And they put it in everything now. Every rudimentary air handler seems like it has an X13 motor, except for the Goodman ARUF, and maybe, like I said, the TEM4. And there might be another one I'm not thinking about. I don't know what Linux puts in their base stuff, because there's no Linux stuff around here. I know the Yorks they were X13s. Train GAM 5's X13. TAM 7's variable speed, although I think you can set it up for variable speed or constant torque. Now, some of them are constant torque and some of them are constant CFM. And I think the TAM 7 you can do both, and probably the TAM 8. I've never used a TAM 8, but I've only used a TAM 7. So, but that's all she wrote for this one. Thanks for coming along, guys. I'll see you again tomorrow at some point. And then I'll see you again on Monday, and if I find something interesting in the meantime, I'll blogificate about it. Stay safe and have a good weekend, guys. Well, the camera didn't turn around, even though I hit the button. Stay classy, guys. Take 2. There we go. Now it works. On the road again. I just can't wait to get back on the road again.